Now let's finish up the Rhino. So this IOR, by the way, needs to be corrected. I thought marble was 1.4, but I looked it up and it's actually 1.486 technically. It's not going to make a huge difference in the way this looks, but I just figure that might as well be super accurate if we can. Anyway, let's add a texture map to this. And well, I was thinking about this. Normally when you add a texture map to an object, you go through a process called UV mapping. If you're not familiar with what that is, it's basically taking the points on the model and it's associating that with a coordinate system that is used to find pixels along an image. So if you're not too familiar with what UV mapping is, that's essentially what's going on. But because of our mesh is actually kind of really complicated, being able to UV this thing would be a huge hassle, and it's not really going to work. So there's a better method that we can use. Instead of UV mapping, I'm going to go back to our camera, and I'm going to use something called Tri-planar Projection. This is not something that I would consider to be a beginner topic, but this UV Tri-planar Project is really awesome. And this is going to do the trick for us really well. With Tri-planar Projection, we take 3 images facing X, Y, and Z, and we project those images onto the model. And wherever the 2 images meet along the model, it's going to blend them together. That's the idea behind Tri-planar Projections. And the cool thing about it is that you don't need UVs to show a texture on something. So we have this. I'm going to connect this color to the base color. On your node, if you need to expand the surface options right here, that's where you will find base color. And now that we're here, let's browse for a marble texture that I prepared for us. So I'm in Hip, Text. I'm going to go to White Marble version 1, just like that. While I'm here, I'm also going to turn off Tint with Color. We don't need this color tinting the texture. And I also happen to know that to get the right scale, let's change this to 2, 2, and 2. Just like that. Let's also Control-C, copy this texture map, and do the same for the y-axis, 2, 2, 2, and same deal with Z. And then we will go 2, 2, 2, like that. And after we do that, let's see what we have. All right, so we have it applied to our Rhino. It's looking really bright, and that's because the texture map values are getting close to white. In order to turn this down, let's go to our environment light, and let's take the exposure down by about 1.5. And now we can really easily see what's going on. And what's cool about this is that now we have this subtle detail going through. We have these little marble veins going through, and that just, it adds a lot of detail. You'll notice that when the X plane and the Y plane meet, that the direction of the veins are actually not lining up very well with this camera angle. So let's go back to our material and change that. We can go to our Y-axis and then change the angle to 90 so that everything is going about left to right, or about that direction. And now we've blended that in really nicely. Awesome. So we have this texture now. What I'd like to do is I'd like to now alter the surface on this. So I'd like to actually add a little bit of displacement so that we can add a bit of a raw, unrefined surface quality to this. Let's go back to our Alfred material. Under displacement, we can now check this thing called Enable Noise Displacements. And this will basically just take a noise and it will alter the position of our geometry, and whoa, look at that. we've now ruined Alfred. He's blown up. Looks kind of cool, actually. But anyway, while we can see this very easily, let's change our frequency. So to pause this, I'm going to press pause, and I will say frequency of about half. Turning that down will make the noise a little bit more broad so that we don't have as fine of chunks being displayed. So we have that. Now let's take our amplitude way down. So something very subtle like 0.0025. Just something that'll barely alter the surface on this. And now that we've done that, if we zoom in, we can see that it's added a little bit of extra detail. It's actually pretty subtle at this point, but when we change the lighting, this will be more noticeable. All right, so that wraps it up for the texturing component. I really like the way that this is looking. Now let's change the lighting. And for the lighting, this is very simple. We can go to our object, and we can just press tab and start typing lights. I'm going to add a light. I'm going to turn off our environment by going to light intensity, 0. And now I'm going to change this type to a sun. And I'm going to go to my viewport. Here is our sun. I'm going to press this multi-widget tool to see where we're at. And you can see the direction that it's currently facing. We want this going in 90 degrees, so we can just do that. And under the transform, I will take the rotate to -90. And now that we have that, let's see what we get. And there we go. That is most of Alfred. At this point, I would like to turn up the displacement by just a little bit more. I'm not getting quite the amount that I like. So I'm going to go to the material, and I'm going to change this amplitude to, let's say, 0.025. And let's see if that does something better for us. And there you go. Now we've added just a little bit of that unrefined sort of texture to our marble. And I think that looks pretty cool. So this is about it. I mean, this is how I got the render that you saw before. This is about that. However, I want to show you one more trick while we're here, and that is with light linking. Let's say that I want two suns. Let's say I want one specifically controlling the light on Alfred, and I want another light that only controls the light for the backdrop. Here's how you would do that in Houdini. I'm going to change this to Alfred's sun, and I'm going to stop the render for a second. I'm going to hold down Alt and drag to copy it, and I'm going to change this to backdrop sun. And now that I've done that, to associate Alfred's sun with Alfred, go to the geometry node, and under render, you'll see that we have render, shading, and then we have this light mask. And we can use this light mask to basically say, only listen or only pay attention to Alfred's sun. Now I'm just clicking and dragging to that section right there. Same deal with the backdrop. We can go select the backdrop and then say backdrop sun under the light mask. Now that we've done this, let's start our render again. And now that we've done that, we can go change our exposure, and it's only changing it for the backdrop. So if you want to have a darker backdrop for Alfred, we can do this. If we notice that the highlights are clipping a little bit here, we can have this light and adjust that a tad bit as well. So we can just do something a bit more like that, maybe -0.5. We're still clipping a little bit, but it's not too bad. Let's do one more thing in the next lesson, and I'm going to talk to you guys about how to set up render settings to get a clean render out of this.